thought I'd go through basically in a bit more detail what owning a EV was like in the first year or two, because in the first year or two I had two EVs. The first one, as I mentioned, was the 24 kilowatt hour Renault Zoe, which was a great car, particularly in the city where I worked. I could usually commute on foot, so there was never any issue in terms of a daily commute that I had to be able to do back and forth. So I used it kind of as an experiment to sort of see how it all worked and how easy it would be to integrate into my life. Pretty fun, I guess, initially, because being a 24 kilowatt hour Zoe, it was limited in terms of range. And there was certainly a few places I could charge from, so that wasn't necessarily the major issue. It was more if you sort of went out of town, then things got a bit more exciting and you had to really plan things out. I couldn't charge at my flat. That had failed. I'd tried with the management company to try and get something in place. They were very adamant that they didn't really want to be digging up the concrete floor, even though they had a lot of ducting and a lot of 3-point plugs dotted around, presumably for cleaning staff or tools and stuff like that. So yeah, a bit frustrating. And in terms of power supply, that didn't seem to be too much of an issue. I'd spoken to some experts on the matter, and really, if I could get something like a 16 amp charger, that would be sufficient, because, as I said, I didn't really use the car daily, so that wasn't going to be an issue, long charge times. But anyway, I wasn't able to do that, so I had to find a convenient fast, rapid charger nearby that I could use, and ideally something that I could use and do something else and not be stuck there waiting. Because as much as a rapid charger would be quicker, I didn't like the idea of just sitting around and sort of following that trope that was going around at the time of, oh, if you're having to charge, well, you're going to plug it into the slowest charging known to man, and you're going to sit there and just, waste your life away. So fortunately, I managed to find a rapid charger that was behind a Holiday Inn. And as I said before, I had a membership with the charging network, and I was able to use their card to get 20% off coffees. They had like a sort of Starbucks-esque cafe that I could just use. So I was kind of one of those weird people that went to the hotel every so often, flashed off my card. No one knew what it did, because I was always dealing with different members of staff. Would eventually get my 20% discount, enjoy my coffee, and probably by the time I'd worked all that sort of stuff out, the car was ready and fully charged. It was near a supermarket, so I could do a shop. So that was typically be my supermarket of choice anyway. I could do a shop, so I wasn't wasting time. That was something that I really didn't want to have to sort of tell people, oh yeah, I sit there for half an hour and don't do anything. That was always something I could potentially do. It's funny, actually, I've been past that way lately, and that charger is now gone. Probably because it was one of those things where the hotel was like, sure, we'll take some money and we'll do this fancy electric car nonsense. And sure, yeah, we'll put in a discount for the coffee and stuff, but I mean, it's probably not going to go anywhere. It's probably not going to be that inconvenient. We'll just take this company's money. And I think that's kind of that's the impression I kind of got from it. It was one of those things where hardly anyone used it. They forgot it was even there, really. And unfortunately, because it was a hotel, the people that did know about it kind of sort of took the mick a bit in terms of using it to the fullest. there's definitely a couple of examples I've got where I think the first time I had an example where the person had been there a couple of hours. Now, obviously they were staying at the hotel, or at least utilizing the retail sort of park that was nearby. That was fine. And then I think the second time was I think a family were coming to have a look at the universities, and so obviously they were staying at the hotel. But I think they had actually brought a plug-in hybrid, plugged it in overnight, and then proceeded to carry on with their day, I guess, looking around the universities using public transport, and left the car. So I remember asking the help desk to get someone to actually move the car, figuring that, well, if they're staying at the hotel, there's a good chance you can move your car. But unfortunately, they were out because they were looking at universities for their child. So that was a bit of a bummer, and it's probably for the best actually that charger's no longer there. There's a sort of bigger, faster, rapid charge sort of station not too far away, actually, inconveniently placed in the actual retail park now. So it's for the best really that that's gone, but certainly back in the old days that's what I used to use, and it worked. And I think I can only recall those two times when there was a blockage, and I probably would have to just go somewhere else. I kind of had a plan B or C in that instance, so it wasn't the end of the world. I think the other charging spot that I could use, and I would only use this if I was willing to sort of park in the multi-story car park. There was some charging ports and a charging station on the second or third floor that I could use, and provided you got there at the right time, there was always something available. So that was another option I could use, but it was a bit of a pain if you were doing the shopping, because you'd have to do a big walk around to get to my apartment. So yeah, that was not really sort of how I had expected things to sort of work out initially. I kind of had hoped that I would have been able to charge at the flat, and that would have been perfect. Like I say, didn't use it all the time, but when I did, it would have been nice to be able to use it and be able to set off from home with what would have probably already been an overly complicated journey anyway, because of the short range of the Zoe, not having to then find a rapid charger beforehand before you could even start the journey, sort of thing. So I said before, I actually used the token of installing a home charger. I ended up using that at my parents' house, have that installed there for a reduced price, and that was good because I did commute there pretty much every other week, and it would just be a case of charging up before, if I needed to, getting to my folks' house, charging up as long as I could there, really sort of while I was there, and then on coming home, and hopefully not needing to charge, at least initially, but if so, I would just stop off at the Holiday Inn or another charger if that was full. So yeah, that was my little cycle that I had going on, and it worked. Like I say, anything that was a bit more complicated, need a bit more planning, but having usually family meetups in Sheffield or in Manchester, which was more rare, I kind of figured out a route for where the chargers were, how reliable they were, and just the routine that you kind of would go through. So Was there range anxiety? Of course there was, absolutely. That was kind of something that you couldn't avoid, really. If I was able to charge from home, then I don't think it would have been an issue, because that would have just been a more streamlined sort of process. You could have just got home and then just charged, having to always consider whether you've got enough charge to be able to get back. Even if you didn't want to actually charge on your way home, figuring out whether you actually had enough charge to be able to charge the next day or over the weekend or whatnot, that was always something that was going in the back of your mind. Traveling on the motorway as well, again, I like to stick to the speed limit, but there'd be times where you'd probably have to slow down to 50 or 60 just to ensure that you weren't going to mess up the whole day. Weather as well would probably factor in. So if it was going to be miserable, then there's a good chance you're probably stopping again. At the time, I had been sort of looking into future Tesla Model 3 ownership, and I had come across some YouTubers who were from Norway, who were sort of leading their best life, really. They had ample range, they had charging networks being set up everywhere. There was cold weather, extreme cold weather, snow, and they seemed to be getting through it perfectly fine. So it was probably from watching those videos that I thought, oh, well, this, if it can be doable there, then it just needs the right car with the right pieces to make it work. Aptly being the main thing, range, which the Zoe didn't have. And so I kind of wrote it off as just a thing of, hey, the Zoe's got a low, it's got less range than a Tesla, so if I can make it work with this, then I'll be laughing by the time I get to having a Model 3, because I'll definitely appreciate the additional range, and I will also appreciate the access to the supercharger network, which I just assumed that that was going to be rolled out everywhere, just as that had been in Norway. There was a few other little bits that kind of threw me regarding how certainly other manufacturers went about sort of relaying information, predominantly charging information on their cars. A Zoe would obviously tell you the percentage of charge, the state of charge, and it would tell you how many miles it thought you could do. Now, granted, the guessometer is not going to be perfect, but it gave you some sort of miles that it thought you could do. But it never was able to do both of those at the same time. You kind of, I think when you turn the car off, you got the percentage. Or maybe I'm misremembering that. Anyway, the figures, all the information that they would provide you with was all over the place or hidden, particularly the charging speeds. The charging speeds on a Zoe were non-existent. It would tell you if you plugged in, it's going to take you an hour to charge up to 100%, or 2 hours, or what have you. And that time would obviously go up the slower the charger was. But the problem was that after a while, 2 hours, 1.5 hours, they all feel the same, and it would have been nice if they had the ability to show me what the amount of kilowatts or ampage was on the charger at the time. Because then that way I was more familiar with, okay, I'm a 50 kilowatt rapid charger. If it's only giving me 2, there's a problem, I might as well go and find another one. Whereas if it's going to tell me it's going to take 2 hours, I'm somewhat none the wiser. I appreciate now it's just a matter of calculating and sort of figuring out, okay, if it's taking 2 hours on this speed of charger, that's not good, where it should be saying half an hour. But it was one of those things where you know what the charge rate is because you're doing the calculation to tell me how long it's going to take. So yeah, it was a bit of a weird thing of just, why are you hiding that information? It's, you know, if someone's wanting to look for that information, they should have it. But if they didn't care, then they're none the wiser to it. Put it as a small little, you know, figure in the corner, and most people won't care. I mean, most people who aren't really sort of wanting to experiment with this sort of stuff aren't using them anyway. So yeah, just a weird thing of certain information, certain figures just were hidden. I think on Ecotricity's chargers, you were lucky that you could actually see the meter at the back. It would actually show you what the charge rate was there. Because actually, to be fair, chargers, if they had a screen, wouldn't actually tell you how fast they were charging at. I say you take it for granted probably now with like Ionity chargers and yeah, most chargers now will show you what the charging rate is as well as the time. But back then, they just tell you the time, which, you know, again, it'd be nice to know, is that good? Is that bad? Am I wasting my time? Especially towards the end of a charging cycle where the charging rate would get slower. And certainly the Zoe I had suffered from I think it was a BMS issue where it would never fully charge up to 100%, or it would, but it would take an awful long time. Like literally from 99% to 100% would take forever. So I guess you would never really know what side of that 1 extra percent am I, you know, far off from, you know, not having that much detailed information, or knowing that that was actually happening and that you were actually only charging at probably 2 kilowatts, but it's trying to fill up that last 0.1%. You know, having that information would have been helpful. I mean, I finally got the that BMS update sorted out. You had to go to the dealer, unfortunately, to deal with that. There was no over-the-air updates or anything like that. There was for the sat-nav, which was good, because previous sat-navs I'd used typically didn't bother with that sort of thing. But yeah, got the update for on the BMS, and then I was able to get an additional bit of range, which got me very excited. I thought, oh, possibilities of this. I think I was only ever getting 100. I could get up to 130. So silly as it was back in those days, you know, an extra 30 miles was brilliant. Oh, I could potentially go to somewhere and not have to charge on the way, you know. And that's probably what caused the initial issue that I had with traveling to Manchester, where I would normally have stopped at a charging station and didn't because it was blocked or iced. And I thought, I'll carry on because I've got that additional range now, so I'll get there. Yeah, that probably wasn't actually, you know, as amazing as it sort of turned out to be. I think when I was actually going to Manchester, I picked the worst wintry day. I'm sure the beast from the northeast was actually coming that day, and I nearly ended up in a situation of like Apollo 13 of just, I had to shut everything down. Hell, even the car was actually saying, I'm going to have to turn the climate control off because I don't know if you're going to make this. And that was at the top of the peak of the Lake District. So I didn't have any gloves, so I was very cold and thought probably I'm going to die here because I couldn't be bothered to wait for someone to come out of IKEA so that I could just charge up what I clearly needed to charge up to. Fortunately, with electric cars, you may have spent a lot of energy getting up the hill, but you also reclaimed some energy coming down the hill. And that climb down that hill was the greatest thing ever. Instantly forgave everything that had just happened because I was able to just coast basically down that hill, and I managed to make it to the IKEA charger on the other side. And I think probably because I was seeing my sister that day, on the way back, I think I stopped about 4 times. I probably only needed to stop twice, but I stopped 4 times. I think I just didn't want to be in that situation again, especially with it being quite cold as well. So probably I kept that first Zoe for about a year, just using it on and off, occasional trip to Sheffield, an even rarer trip to Manchester, always stopping to charge after that Beast from the Northeast incident. I clearly knew that I wasn't going to be able to eke any more range out of what I was already getting out of the Zoe. I would probably want to seek out a car that had a little bit more range on it, which is a shame because I love the car, and if I was able to charge from home, that might have helped sway me against that. But I knew that I couldn't just stick to short journeys forever. I kind of wanted to be able to do things, and the first Zoe had definitely limited me in that respect. It's not the car's fault. It is my fault, to be fair. Actually, I picked a low range EV that's as my primary car without any other car to use in substitution. That's why I was looking to fix that by getting myself a second Zoe, because again, choices out there weren't great. I still didn't want to leave. So I managed to find myself a second Zoe. Now this time, as well as increasing the range from the 24 kilowatt hours to 41, I was also curious about the charging speed. Now, the first Zoe that I had bought was the R240 motor, which would only do 22 kilowatts. I was impatient, and also with the range being quite low, I was stopping at charging stops more often than one would typically do. So I was curious in the Q motors that they had sort of sold, where those were able to go up to 43 kilowatts. And Ecotricity had supported chargers that could do those. So yeah, I found one in Northampton. I'd spoken to the dealer over the phone. He assured me that it was a rapid charge Zoe, despite the fact that I think the ad had said it was an R90, which are the regular 22 kilowatt charging Zoes. Went to meet the guy, and yeah, I checked inside the door frame. You can check to see the model, and it was indeed a rapid charge one, which was great. When I purchased the first Zoe, it came with an insurance sort of subscription where you would pay a monthly fee to ensure the sort of state of health of the battery. The thing that was most worrying for customers was, well, if I buy this and the battery goes dead in 3 years, as some people were telling them, I'm just left with a heavy brick. So manufacturers came up with an idea of, well, we can reduce the price of the car slightly and then sell you effectively a subscription where we will guarantee the health of the battery 75% upwards. Any issues you have, we'll come and help you, we'll come and tow you if necessary. And you can adjust the payment depending on how much mileage you do. So because I wasn't doing a lot of mileage, I had it on probably the lowest amount. that you could get, which was maybe 50, 60 quid a month. So considering that charging was peanuts back in those days, to me, just having a car, even something with low range or whatnot, it was better than not having a car at all. Took the new Zoe back home, got one of the directions wrong, had to do effectively a U-turn, but was on the motorway, so it was a couple of miles sort of that added on to our journey. And that typically in the original Zoe would have frightened me to death, because effectively that would have written off the whole journey, the whole plan. You'd have had to stop and charge somewhere just to ensure that you could get home. But I was less concerned now in this new Zoe. It had the range. I wasn't too worried about that. So there was a bit more relaxing. It wasn't like double the range, but it was certainly, I was definitely more confident in what the guessometer was telling me. The charging speed, it was great to have, not as significant as I thought it was going to be. Typically when manufacturers boast the charging speed, something that charges up to 350 kilowatts, would do so throughout the whole charging session. However, it's a bit like filling up the bathtub. It may start off quickly and then gradually slow down. And in some cases with certain manufacturers, it may do it for the first 10 minutes until it hits 10% and then goes down to a regular sort of speed. That was certainly the case with the second Zoe. So as much as it was nice to have that additional boost, it wasn't as groundbreaking as I thought it was going to be. Yeah, it's one of those things that, let's say, you get used to learning about, and I say 10 years ago, it's less of a concern now. Okay, I think that's I think I've covered everything in regards to the two Zoes that I owned. Obviously, I didn't own them both at the same time. Jumped into the deep end with the first Zoe. Less than 100-mile range. Couldn't really do any road trips at all. Moved on to the second Zoe. A few more road trips, a bit more confidence. To have the additional speed boost. More modern ones don't bother so much until they upgraded to CCS. If I'd had CCS on this on the Zoe, then that would have probably been a lot more useful. So I'd definitely recommend, if you are in the market for a Zoe, to ensure it does have CCS. Right, I think I'll leave it there. And as usual, like and subscribe. I'm going to make a few more of these, I think. So yeah, stay tuned.